this to be sexist, a woman came up with this puzzle piece, Barbara Newman from Wyoming, Michigan, and she assigned the meaning to the colors and created this puzzle piece. Uh, she said the pink can represent our deficits, that we all have weaknesses. Uh, how true? Uh, my daughter is visually impaired and has the use of one hand and arm. Oh, but what a remarkable memory, as many people, because they have to make up for what is diminished in one area. They have to be strong in other areas. And the same is true, Ray Charles and his listening ability, though he was blind, and so forth and so on. So, what I want to get real about this disabilities thing with you, Susan, and Phyllis and Diana. You're welcome to chime in, but I'm going to ask you how well you relate to different kinds of disabilities. There are situations where people don't know borders and parameters and so forth. But Susan, one of the things I admire about you do it 10, 100 times better than I do, is your social skills. You do walk through the church and through, and you mix and get along with everybody. Not so?
Well, I would say there are times. There are times. As you were sharing that, I was thinking about in Florida, a church I was serving. We were having staff meeting one day, and there was somebody in the congregation who was exceptionally difficult, and the whole staff was talking about how difficult this person was. And our custodian's name was Tom, and Tom was, I'm thinking about what people with disabilities teach us. Tom had some limits, mental limits, intellectual limits, but he did his job excellently. And that day, as the rest of us were complaining about Mr. X, Tom said, "Well, Pastor Susan, that person, I think, is just God's sandpaper."
Wouldn't come up with that. But go ahead.
And I said, "Oh my gosh, you're right." And I guess that, that one of the things that I'm always challenged by, even though social skills may be a little bit on one of my strength areas, there's a lot of things that are on my deficit areas, and these two ladies know a lot of those deficits. But one of the things that I'm reminded of is that every person is maybe not as easy for me to relate to as possible, but every person has that imago Dei, the image of God within them, and maybe that person is there to teach me something that I wouldn't know otherwise. And so I do try in my life to value them, to find a way of connection with them. But that doesn't mean it's easy. It's not easy.
Let me name some specifics.
Okay. I can tell you what I'm not great at.
Well, go for it. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
No, you list the specifics and I'll tell you. I'll just say I have a hard time with that one.
I already mentioned behavioral disorders, oppositional defiant disorder probably is one that
Yep.
the church ought to have a plan.
Right.
Some people can have a possible violent, not just create outbursts.
Yeah. I had a situation, I didn't handle it well because I got stubborn, and I realized later that's not the right thing for me to get stubborn and insist upon my way. So I need to know because we're natural authority figures. So how do we deal with them? So that's a learning for me.
And I think that's where it is so important for us to learn those skills.
Yes.
So that we are aware, we learn, we are aware of what the situation is, and then we have some ways that we can be helpful and safe for everybody.
Down syndrome folk have this reputation of being teddy bears, of being so gentle and so, not so those of us on the autism spectrum. You know, we got our reps for being socially one thing, and if it's in our heads, it's out our mouths.
Right.
You know, Barbara.
Yeah, I remember one time you said something to me after a sermon. And it was just, can't hit it out of the ballpark every Sunday, can you, Pastor Susan?
Yep.
That was pretty early on in the relationship too. But I think
And
Let's be real.
that is us.
Yeah.
And furthermore, we not only, I mean, Barbara Newman says, I got this perfect solution for Asperger people. Just let them go in the room and they'll be happy by themselves. Not entirely, but you know, it's got.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things on that situation that we love about you is that you told us what your ability and what your disability was. So when
That's
you
right.
said
Yes.
that, we said, okay.
That's Mike, yeah.
That's Mike. We took no offense by it. And I think that's
Well, at
probably
least not long.
not long, not long. But I think that's one of the. I think that's probably as we go through all of these. That is that I know for a person is easier is if I know what abilities or disabilities and you self-disclose as we're in relationship, I can learn.
Right.
You know, we learn together. You know, because I do things that annoy people all the time too.
But I also have learned that, you know, I'm that, you know, Hamilton has been all the rage on the musical stage.
Yeah, I got a picture of the marquee. That's as close as I got to the play.
You and me both, sister. But anyway, my old college history teacher once talked about the relationship between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, in which Hamilton was quick-witted and fast with the comeback, and you know they vied for George Washington's attention, and Hamilton was always first, you know, to in front of. And Jefferson was slow and methodical and reflective and so forth. I'm not as wise by a long stretch as Thomas, but I am that delayed executive functioning person in an ADH world. And trust me, most people are, but and I don't know about other places, but in Northern Kentucky they used to have a competition called Quick Recall amongst the high schools. To be smart
Yes.
was to be quick.
I was in
Yeah.
Brain Bowl.
Yeah, so were both of my sisters. I was not. And it was hard.
And consequently, you know, I have learned from people with disabilities in my relationships, and that's where, you know, that's where I really think this makes it real. I have learned, you know, why was I glad when Dad wouldn't come home? That's terrible. I didn't know which Dad was going to come home. And I didn't know then, growing up, what bipolar disorder was.
Yes.
And I certainly didn't know he was self-medicating. And you might get good old jovial Dad, or you might get angry. You know, my mother said he was the greatest person in the world until you had to be married to him. Or sick. He had an extreme amount of compassion if you were not feeling well. Other times, that's, you know, what do people with disabilities teach us? Volumes and volumes about our relationships. Because they teach us about ourselves. I learned from being in an ADHD world, from having a father who was bipolar, that I had to be the one to set boundaries. And I can have a more meaningful life when I learn from some of the deficits as well as the strengths that are available. I don't know. Do you have that experience?
I was going to say that one of the things I think that is the churches, all churches are challenged to do, is to be places of authenticity. You know, we feel like when we come to church, we have to say everything. How are you doing? Everything's fine. I'm
Fine.
good. I'm great. It's wonderful to see you. And how can we create a safe place for people to be who they are, to disclose what they need to disclose while setting good boundaries for themselves? But I think Diana brought it up that, you know, the thing that I so appreciate, both of us do, about you, is that you feel good enough in your own skin to share who you are. And that means that you and I have a relationship based on honesty, so that we can, you know, we can have this.
I went to a forum about sexual orientation of all things at a college, and it was by generation. What was it like to come out in different generations? If you were a boomer and came out gay, if you were a millennial and came out gay, Gen X and came, what was a different experience in each one? And after the forum, after the presentation, I went up to the fellow who was my age and I said, tell me about coming out. I said, the reason I'm asking is that I have a learning disability and I've been advised not to tell anyone. What's your take on that? And this gay man said, who's also a psychotherapist, be who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Be who you
Absolutely.
are.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken it and run with it.
Mm-hmm.
This was not all about me. This was about Florence Christian Church. Shame on you all. Thank you for being with us today. This has been great.
Thank you for having us.
God's blessings on what you're going to do.
Thank you, Mike. We're glad you're part of our community, as you choose to be.
Good to be there. Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank
And
you, Mike.
thank all of you, our viewers. Stay tuned. For our next program, we will be hosting Northern Kentucky Hates Heroin, so that will be
Excellent.
exciting.